I'm not hot for you or anything, but I'm just saying you look good.
It's a good way to open it.
So you see how I waited until the recording was on before I snuck that in there?
Nailed it.
So this, can you just restate what you just said, Brandon? Because that's like how I want to intro this.
Sure.
We're not adulting people anymore.
Yeah, we were talking about how people around the world believe in a superset of different stupid stuff. And it's because we don't drag them through a maturity cycle that affords them to act at increasing scales as they move through it.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about how different cultures, civilizations really, express crazy by whatever form of, in other words, what can we learn by civilizational differences in magical thinking, right? And so you sort of get this arc that starts in the Middle East, goes up into the Caucasus, into Russia, into Eastern Europe, into Latin Europe, into Germanic Europe, and into Scandinavian Europe. And it's this, and it's a natural progression, of course, of these things. But what's odd is, American utopianism, Russian magical thinking about the real world, and Arabic magical thinking about the spiritual world. And then we're starting to say, well, what kind of magical thinking do the East Asians engage in? And it's actually just harmony, which Brandon explains.
Mathiness, right?
What?
Mathiness, right? It can be solved for.
Yes. And so the East Asians have a thing where it's just their thing is they have a sort of faith and harmony. So of the magical thinkings, it's like the least bad, right? It's not. Our thing is our metaphysics in the West is competition with nature, heroism, right? So we don't seek harmony, we seek victory, right? Whereas they seek harmony, not conflict evasion. So that's where their magical but they don't really think in, it's more like a trust rather than a magical thinking, right?
They also don't act that way at the state level. They act like it's real.
They act like the world is real, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So that it's really interesting. It's another example of what I've learned, that don't try to think of what a culture does right. Don't think about how people tell the truth. Think about how people lie. Think about how people magically think. People figure out what a culture does wrong. And that's where you actually learn everything interesting. And it's that analysis, that via negativa, that tells us more, because that's where our real differences are. Right.
I like where others are passing costs.
Yes.
Especially exactly. If it's like to me.
Yes. Luke's been killing it on this front the past couple of days, because I know I've been running this responsibility thing, and Luke's been running with it, and it's like, oh, this is getting good right now. So I wanted to go there for what reason? Magical thinking. The world is getting an interesting look right now, and you're seeing this come up in a few places. Like, it's all well and good to pick on Daddy America, right? Until Daddy America says, well, Atlas shrugs, fuck off, you're on your own. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, Daddy was paying for all the infrastructure. Daddy was paying so that we could sit here at home and play nonsense games. And all of a sudden the world's getting a check, a body check. It says, okay. I didn't think of it that way. I just thought of it like every other American. Like, fuck them. Let's just go home, right? The Europeans give us shit. The Canadians give us shit. The Mexicans, everybody's giving us shit all the time. So why should we pay for the household? Why should we bring home a paycheck? Why should we support the world household? Why not just, okay, well, let's go get a condo in the Bahamas and lay in the sunshine and screw chicks and drink fruity drinks. All right. I mean, that's what America gets to do because it doesn't matter to us, right? We got a world, there's a world island called Eurasia, and it's got a peninsula called Africa that's in really bad shape. And we got this world island called, that's pretty big, called North America. And we don't care about the other world island. It doesn't matter at all. They can go kill each other if they want. So
Thanks.
what?
Thanks.
No, I mean, but that's the problem, right? And so what's happening is, I think what's been interesting about this episode is everybody's figuring out. All of a sudden, the Iranians I'm like, well, the Iranians are going to do this. Now they are, right? The Chinese are going to do that. Now they are. The Russians are going to do that. Now they are, because it was all predictable, right? But what happens is all of a sudden everybody realizes that there's no stable equilibrium. I'm going to tie this back to feminism in a minute. That's where I'm going. In case you saw that coming. And so the whole thing is that if you say, well, the Americans say, okay, well, fuck, we're not going to pay for the electric and the heat anymore, which means the world pattern of finance, transport, and trade, insurance, transport, and trade. We're not going to police transportation. That means you all got to buy your own cars. In other words, your own shipping, your own airlines. You got to own your own territorial relationships between companies. That the countries, that means some people are going to be excluded from certain trade zones or whatever. And guess what? Y'all are going to starve like motherfuckers, that hasn't happened on a scale since the Black Goddamn Plague. Okay, fine. Who built this freaking planet? Okay, great. Do we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. Did we do it better than everybody else? Well, obviously, or you wouldn't be in this fucking position of having to worry about mass world starvation and world wars if we decide to stop paying for the electricity and the rent. Well, if you realize that, you realize, what have women been doing? The same thing. Our own, you see how Brandon saw me going. I know it. So, it's like, okay, well, you don't want to stop paying for the rent. Here's what we do here as a men. So we just stop paying for the rent. Now, men are actually stopping, right? They're actually stop paying. They're stop paying for the rent, the electricity, the dinners, whatever. Because what does it cost to be a man? Nothing. Because we're fucking easy. Meat, beer, fire, toys. We're good. Bullshit and farting, and we're all set.
Well, they're trying to take away meat from you. So.
Well, I'm just trying to make the point that what happens is what they do. I said if I was Trump's spokesperson back in that day, I would have just put up our stuff on the wall and say, which lie are you telling? Right. But the one thing we don't have on the wall is, what's our strategy? What's the strategy? Is it democracy? Absolutely not. What's our strategy? It's make the world fucking trade, because it's hard. Because once you trade, the alternative is what was happening now. War, conflict, poverty, whatever. So we're trying to get the world stuck on trade. And that's been our strategy since World War I. Now, has the credentialed class helped the strategy or undermined it? They've actually tried to abuse it, take free ride on it.
Make it worse.
They try to make it worse.
Everything they do, they make it worse.
Everything they do make worse, like women.
They've exposed its vulnerabilities as well. So,
well, I believe that the problem with its vulnerability is the fact that it's state. It isn't sitting on the fucking wall behind the president whenever he's talking. This is what we're doing. The English started it. They fell apart because of this stupid world war. We picked it up. We don't want any more world wars. So here's what we're doing. Here's what we agreed to. We're paying for all you fuckers to have it, and our middle class is paying for it. So all you people that are bitching, you should be thanking the American middle class. They're carrying your asses. And that's it. And say what we're doing. It's like truth is always the best answer. And so Martin, Brandon, you want to say something? No, truth is.
I'm always restraining myself from saying things.
Are you?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Well, say it.
Oh no. I don't have anything coherent currently.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's gonna go like it'll go from me to Luke to you to Martin, and then if Eli's here, it'll be all the way at the bottom. You know, it's like this declining. Declining.
It's a countdown.
It's so anyway, so we just don't tell the world what we're doing, and all this political prevarication, this politicking we do. We talk about democracy and human right. It's all crap.
Mhm.
It's all crap. We're trying to put together what we call natural rights, not human rights, natural rights, so that people are limited to voluntary cooperation and trade in which all people benefit. And therefore, any failure of cooperation leads to worldwide loss, which forces all the world to want to keep us all cooperating together, right? And so, and furthermore, we're maturing the world out of agrarian empires, right? Because the only way to grow your business, your wealth under agrarianism is to increase the land territory empires, and we've converted it to industrialism and industrial and technological society, where where the only reason to have an empire is to extract from others. When what we want is a federation which produces more people who have an opportunity to fill a niche in the market for trades. And so why don't we just say that's what we're doing? And I mean, no, I know you do, but the big they don't.
I went to what is it? One of those meetings that happen locally, public politics locally last night at like a pub with regular people to whom I have a hard time mingling. They want to hear our message because I told it to them.
Yes.
All right. Well, I just do real social science. My first.
Wait, but how do you say it? Do you say it like that? How do you?
The people who run the thing want to know, like, if I'm there as a Republican. It's like, no, I'm here as a social scientist telling you that if you're not waging war against the people you're politicking against, that you're doing it wrong. And I'm going to tell your constituents that. And then I do.
Okay, so that is how you approach. You approach as a social scientist.
Yeah, because I'm a social scientist. I'm not going to tell them that I'm a voting public, like your opinion counts just as much as mine. It's like, no, I have all the solutions. You know nothing about.
You have nothing.
I'm not.
I actually,
this is not a vote.
Brandon, that's a strategy. I mean, I would do that. That's a strategy.
I've been doing it for 6 months. Works really good.
You have to take me on a political date so I can learn from you.
Come anytime you like. I was invited to the meeting tonight in Newburyport if you'd like to go. They're Democrats mostly over there, but there's a Republican meeting. I'm sure they're very, very soft.
Can I get a shower and drive there in time? Probably.
Bet you could.
Yeah, I probably could. Depends on. I always got to watch my energy level. But that sounds like
I'm just gonna do this from the top down. From the
I want to see it because if I can watch you do it, then I can do it myself. And
people want to know what they can do. That's the thing. It's like, what can I do? They're being starved out. What can we do? It's like, how about nothing? Go home and stop paying your taxes to these people, and I'm going to make sure that they try the criminals. And if that doesn't get done, like, be mad.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Go about your life. Go home to your family. My generation should be saddling the boomers with grandchildren, just so the boomers can't fuck things up.
Yeah.
I'm not playing. This is very, very real. Want to fix this place? Let's fix it.
No,
That's
I
what
really
people
like
just-
going as a social scientist. I
Yep.
actually like that. It puts us in a role that's very useful.
Mhm.
Thank you. I learned something very important. And I have to watch my energy because if I get tired, I don't recover fast, but I like the idea of running up there. I'm supposed to visit you soon anyway, aren't I? The end of the
Yes,
month, the end of the month.
next week. Or the
So
week
wait,
after,
so wait a minute. My birthday is July 2nd. When's yours? July.
19th.
And Martin, when's yours?
April 26th.
And Luke?
September 4.
We're all in the male half of the year. Interesting. Okay, so okay, I have to internalize what you just told me because that was a valuable insight. So what I saw in that little discourse, right, is an ability to position our work as formalizing that strategy of cooperation. And I was afraid to tie the two together, but now I'm not so much. And I wanted to ask you about that.
Okay.
In other words, this is the strategy. This has been our strategy. In fact, it was the white man's burden strategy, frankly. That's been our strategy, the Anglo strategy or the European strategy for forever. So unfortunately, colonization doesn't work, but governance does. In other words, economic governance does, but colonization, because you have to want to do it, right?
The mistake we made was bringing the opportunity for cooperation to people that didn't know how and assuming that they knew how.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're correcting that and teaching people how to cooperate.
And some people, and
I teach them also how to identify people they should not cooperate with, that they should
Yes,
identify
yes.
publicly as an enemy and just say, actually, we don't compromise with people like you, ever. So I don't know, deal with that.
that's really good.
There was an erroneous assumption that everybody would want to cooperate.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
Very.
Or
They don't
that we want to cooperate with everyone.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. There's a difference between cooperating by trade and cooperating within a polity, externally and internally.
Yes.
And so even the United States was organized, as was Europe, is to cooperate externally, even though we're different internally. Right? I mean, the church basically did that.
Let's not forget that there was heavy protectionism when the US was rising up.
Yes. So, can we, in other words, there's been a barrier for us to overcome, and that what we're offering is abstract. In other words, and I wanted to keep it pure, but maybe that's the wrong way to do it. Maybe the right way to do it is saying, well, European strategy has been this way forever, and it's gradually gotten better. And the post-war strategy is this, and this is formalizing that as saying it's just another step in European incremental discovery and application of natural law.
The operation just looks like cutting out the bloat. It's like, okay, well, America is obese. We need liposuction, like immediately. If you want to walk, you'd like to walk.
Or exercise.
So, okay. I think I just got what I was looking for.
I don't sell things. I just tell people what their responsibilities are going to be and what they'll be accountable for. It's like, do you want this responsibility? Comes with this accountability. No, oh no, I don't want that.
Yeah, I realize that, but the point is you're going to people. You're not trying to get people to come to you.
Because
And that's why you can do that.
Okay,
That's-
online, I can labor over what I'm going to say to you, right?
Yep.
for days of like in person, there's a demonstrable difference between someone like me and someone who's regular.
Yeah.
It's not close. It's not even close to close.
Mhm.
Because they don't know. And a lot of times it's just old people who are scared. And they express that fear as frustration. They don't know what to do but beg the people at those meetings to do something when they get into office. Please, I'll give you my vote if you just do something about this. They don't believe that people know what to do. They don't believe it when you start telling them. We show up as an anomaly. Everyone knows how anomalies show up in science. Like we just disregard them from the models, but they're actually the real thing. This is one of those.
Well, it's our logo, so
More evidence that you should study outliers, not regularities. Okay, I think I got it. Well, can I talk about website now?
Sure.
Oh my God, what a nightmare. Can I share my screen?
Yep.
Share screen. Do this one. Okay, so I gotta not lose you now. Okay, so I re-coded the whole thing, right? Right, so not all the content is done. And so I've got to put in content, but I fixed the logo and this stuff. And this, and now it should be 1, 2, right? It's fast. There's 2 things that have been eating the speed that I know of, and and there's a third thing I don't know what to do. The first is bots. And there are people who hit WordPress sites through the API, it's basically a denial of service attack. And so what's happening is we are running up against what's essentially a denial of service attack through these RPC calls. I've blocked all the IP addresses that are doing it, but I suspect that that is an ongoing challenge. The second problem is whatever some group of people are doing is causing transactions to the database that are filling the database log files and making it run out of space. This system run out of space. So I don't know if we're being explicitly attacked. Oh, excuse me. The third thing is that there are groups that try to find holes in these websites so they can host videos and forward and whatever on your service. There's this thing is, there's 80 gigs of space on this machine for us. And we use like 15. So I don't know what the hell, and I can't find it. So I'm going to keep working on it. But anyway, I meant what the problems that were being caused by the software are gone. That software is gone. It looks like a similar site or the same site, but it's completely different software underneath. Right? I have a bunch of content to fill out, like, and I want to deal with the fellows issue up here. But I'm a little nervous. Is it okay with everybody that we want to make that a thing, right?
Yes.
Right.
sure.
Sorry?
Sure.
Yes. All right. So I'll put that under under here, right? The donate works again, right? The shop works again. This is a font issue that is, the way this thing is, this software is architected is got a different failure from all, everybody does something partly wrong and I can't figure out why. It's like this, the address of this thing, right, is different, is either unspecified or different. So like you have to like correct it 15 places. There's a lot of stupid stuff in this, and this is WordPress software, right? I separated out, you know, all this stuff about learning, right? I put the glossary back. I'll fix it. So it says the reason is it's fast enough now, right? Then this will be the book, right? Links to the books, the science. This is linked to the Constitution and the law. I decided to incorporate the product here as a means of governing, right, under it. And I think I'm going to add what we just talked about, which is the strategy over here as a thing here. So it'll be the, you know, simple stuff to learn, the strategy, the science, the law, the technology, implement it. So I think that's what I'll do. Otherwise, the thing is, the thing works beautifully. And I just have to figure out if the disk space problem is because we're being, you know, attacked and hacked, or whether it's just that at the scale of this site and its memory usage, we just have to upgrade the server in order to accommodate it. I just don't know the difference. I've gone through, like, I'm at the point where I'm going through the database and looking for it, but I don't know if I can show it to you, but I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to expose server stuff on a video. But then, I mean, it's like half the database is being updated every day, which creates a, I don't know if you know how databases work, but whenever you change something, there's a log file created, and it's like the before state and the before state and the after state. So you theoretically you can play the log file and reverse it, right? I mean, back up. So I don't know if that happens much anymore. Back in the day, it was something we did all the time, but I'm an old timer when it comes to databases. And, you know, we used to have to use hand cranks to start the database engine. Anyway, so I think that in the sense that we have the ability to get here, I think that's fine. I wanted to hook in, do a little bit more to promote the Telegram and whatever, but I'm afraid.
I understand.
You know what I mean?
It's attracts a certain type of people.
Yes. So I'd rather just leave it here. What about, now, registering is one thing because our mailing list, I mean, cleaning that, I'm not going to pull it up here right now, but cleaning the mail, I used to clean the mailing list once a month. I haven't done it in like a year now. And there's like tens of thousands of spam in there. All right. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's actually pretty easy because the way they bypass the filters, there's a pattern to how they bypass the filters. And once you figure out those patterns, you just delete everything that fits that pattern. Right? But you know, what about this? Do we actually want to, in other words, here's what I'm trying to get at. How do we attract the right people to ask for help? I think you have to frame it. Brandon just set a great position, a great frame, and that if you're involved in politics and you want to, if your organization or your group wants help or advice, then contact us here. And I think we want to avoid the individuals. Tell me if I'm wrong in that taking.
I don't know yet. Keep talking.
So what happens when we attract individuals? A lot of people, we attract people, and the problem is there's a cult. Whenever we attract a new group of people, we get a lot of idiots and bad people for the 3 good people we find.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and the fact that they're individuals looking for individual fulfillment is different from their members of groups looking to assist their group.
Yes.
How do we address those 2 markets?
Just target moms and like Republican committees. You just pick the people who you have the strategies for that are already in the positions to either make noise, make it hard on the people who are in their way, that's moms, right? Or in a position to propose legislation or the removal of legislation.
What's the goal of this attraction?
Well, you want to frame the interaction. In other words, we want to frame the interaction so we attract and interact with the people we prefer to, because they are willing to get out and have influence, rather than the people who just want to socialize at the margins.
I tell people that I'm going to help them, but at first it's going to feel hard because you're going to have to adapt to me. I'm not wrong. We're not going to do it your way. We're going to do it this way because there's not another way to do it. And I work with people who are amenable under that strategy, because those who aren't, like, they're not helpful. They are there for attention.
Right.
They want to have a grievance.
Well, that's actually the issue.
Their way to socialize.
That's the answer to the question. Are you here to get attention? Or are you here to get something done?
This is how
You're applying a filter.
Yes.
Right. And so how do you frame that so that we are filter out the people?
The criteria, just give them the criteria for cooperating with us. You must have the following competencies and be in one of these positions, or don't contact us.
Well, I mean, yeah, we need to keep finding. I mean, look at the product of some of the guys in Telegram. I mean, the work. I mean, if we could get 6 Contra Fabians, we'd essentially double our leadership base. Right? That's what we want. So I don't want to avoid those people. You know, I want to find them. But the problem is the only way to find them is they have to survive the King of the Hill games because they want to.
I think the benefit of focusing on groups is that we pull a leader that can engage with that group or from that group's frame.
Yeah.
So gathering a bunch of unaffiliated potential leaders doesn't accomplish that interaction with the groups that need to hear what we're doing. We still want them, but I think the focus on groups is because it allows them to carry our message back into that group. Which you can't do if you don't have a group.
We need to then we need to put together a talk of what went wrong and how to fix it. And we need to offer to present that to groups. Right? Luke, what's that face mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to, we're going to have to get feedback from whatever person is engaging with us about how to frame that for those groups. But because I mean, every group is trying to solve a different problem. They all have different incentives and they all have different problems that they're solving for. So
Yeah, so
The
give me an
abstract layer
example.
is great, but
Give me an example of that. Because we pretty much address every issue, right? All they would have to do is ask us all we'd have to do is say which issues are important to you,
yes.
right?
is
So
all we have to do.
but the what went wrong story and what to do about it's the same. And then it's how we address the particular needs they have, right?
Yeah, so I guess, Brandon brought up the moms, right? The mom sitting at the school board meeting going, how the hell did we get here? Is not connecting the dots from our what went wrong story to her sitting in that room. So we need someone that can frame why she's sitting in that room. Frame our what went wrong story into why she's sitting in that room, listening to a school board try to destroy her children.
Because they are trying to destroy her children.
Yeah, well, they're not trying,
did
they're
it.
doing it.
And they're doing it, and they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
My preference for school is to give them the opportunity to pull their children and then offer them an education for free while we try all of this public education system for crimes.
Mhm.
Abused them outwardly for 2 years, just straightforwardly, and told the parents that it was good for them. What else do you do with people like that? You try them for being criminals, or you don't have law, or you don't want order. You don't have to have those things. You can have what the WEF is going to usher in for you and your kids.
I understand. I'm just trying to say what generally, it's like the old doctor. They came to me and said, "We want you to do a talk radio show." And I'm like, I'm not the right person for this, right? And I said, it's really easy. They said, gave Dr. Phil as example. You have basically 10 points. That's all you ever make. You make 10 points and you just repeat them in different contexts.
Right.
Right. And so the whole point of having a Dr. Phil show is to repeat the 10 points. Oprah does the same thing. I'm not going to get on Oprah, but I mean, she's just, Rush Limbaugh did the same thing, right? I mean, everybody does the same thing. You just have 10 points. You never have to state the 10 points, right? Everything resolves to 10 points. I'm trying to create you want to have a story that frames the problem, even if your 10 recommendations are different. Right? We have a story. What went wrong? They did it on purpose, and they're evil, right? And they're trying to reverse our generation of responsibility, and that's what you're objecting to. Or we're trying to make us dysfunctional, so we're dependent, and so and they're succeeding. So we can do a quick outline of that history, and we can say how it was implemented. But that's just a 5 or 10 minute introduction. Then you say, okay, so since it's all about responsibility, how do we put it back? And then we can go over the different solutions we have for if it's education for the economy. It doesn't make any difference. We've answered the whole spectrum of problems. We have all those questions answered. I don't think there's anything we don't know how to answer. I mean, they might not like some of our answers because they're undecidable, and therefore it's like, look, the abortion issue requires local determination because it's a permission, it's not a truth. So, if you want to do that, that's fine. But this whole, I think, in other words, we're sort of done, right? We're just getting to the point now. We have to take a product to market. And we're trying to figure out how to get into a market where we have the least resistance and the most opportunity to form direct communications through sales relations rather than mass marketing. Because mass marketing isn't going to work.
Can I have everyone's faces back?
Huh?
Can I have everyone's faces back?
Everyone's faces
on screen.
I have your
Oh,
natural.
I'm sorry. I meant to do that a while ago.
I can't not see that.
So
I
where
think
I'm
we
seeing
go too.
traction in this kind of area is where the solution provider is successfully fighting the enemy that the audience wants to fight or is fighting, right? We got in the position, we're talking about responsibility. We got in the position where now, because everybody wanted somebody else to do their fighting for them.
Mhm,
We've demonstrated that doesn't work. You have to fight.
mhm.
You have to be responsible. Okay. But nobody knows how to do the fight anymore. So they still want somebody else to do the fight for them. So we have to come in and say, this is how you fight this enemy.
That's right.
Every group's enemy is going to be different, but we have to be able to come in and say, this is how you fight your enemy.
Okay, now that's a sale right there.
I mean, that's what Lindsay's doing with parents right now. He's saying, this is how you fight your enemy, not
Yeah.
my enemy, not some obscure enemy. This is how you, parent, fight your
What
enemy.
your enemy.
Note, he pulls kids from school. He says, pull your kids from school. They're harming them.
It actually is the most effective way of doing it.
Of course it is, because then you have a grievance. You're going, I'm paying you, but you're not babysitting the kid anymore. So we have a problem. We should be seeking restitution for the 2 years they kept them captive. They don't have the money to pay back what they're doing. The grievances for transgender surgeries alone are going to bankrupt states. We don't have it economically to do what we're doing right now.
Actually, you just gave us another answer, which is if you bait children into hazard, and then you are liable for the cost of restitution. I think that's the best answer to the gender transition strategy.
That's what the law
It's
is.
liability.
But you
Now,
know,
Go
we're
ahead.
talking about how do we attract this group or that group. Find an enemy that we can successfully combat now and fight them. And we will attract the group that's been trying to fight that enemy.
And we'll win easily.
Now, do we want to do? I might be approaching this right. So just tell me. There's education, which is what you're talking about. There's advocacy, right, which is reaching people. There's education. There's identifying a specific problem, which is what Luke said. And there's proposing legislation. In other words, what's the deliverable that determines success, Luke, if we do that? So in other words,
If we can find an effective enemy, we do all of the above.
yes.
We show all the groups fighting that enemy the different paths to beating that enemy. Because they're all going to have different. Each one of those that you mentioned is what a different group is doing, is engaged in that fight with that enemy about.
Mm-hmm.
Really, we got to find the right enemies and become their bad guys.
Okay, so that is the sequence then.
Yeah.
But I say that's good. I just want to know.
People better understand that we better get this done before dads start showing up at dudes' houses who have abused their children.
Uh-huh.
You want to play with fire? Play with fire. You've been playing.
Well, I mean, they know this, right? I mean, you hear this already. It's openly talked about. I mean,
they're acting like they don't know it.
no. Well, they're acting like they do know. They know what the average people not, but the leadership knows perfectly well that what we call is that that progressives are incrementalists and conservatives are binary, right? And so they get constantly agitated or whatever, and we go from 0 to 100 overnight, and 100 is we start hurting people.
The difference between undermining and physical violence.
Right. I mean, undermining is gradual and low velocity, and force is direct and high velocity, and that's the difference. And so what they know that we're getting close to hanging people.
They can't do anything to solve what they need to solve for within their frame. To stop it. Anybody who is looking to escape justice, like if they keep doubling down, you will end up in the criminal camp, in the chain of liability that harmed someone that we care about more.
So is that our objective, is to criminalize sedition?
if we win, what will happen is people will go on trial and then everyone's educated in the law.
Yeah.
And that's it, because we have criminals that are killing people.
So what
lying.
we're really doing is we're trying to eliminate the need for violence by using the courts, the law and the courts,
It's the only thing it's good for.
right? Okay.
If the court's not delivering you settlement among your people, they're not doing their job. And they delivered it back to the people, right? Abortion, which was the right thing, but there's not a coherent polity to hash that out. They're delivering conflict back to the people.
So again, I'm an executive, I focus on deliverables. I focus on testability, right? So when I think about this, the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm thinking basically, how would I train a salesman to go out and do this? How would I train a trainer to go out and do this? How would I train a lead to go out and implement it? I'm trying to figure out what's the program. The reason you need a program is so people don't vary from it, right? Because all of a sudden, that people get creative, which means they limit their responsibility by lowering the standard of their deliverable. So one of the reasons I usually, when I start a company, I put everything out on the website or before a website, I put everything out in the marketing material, because it creates the standard by which your staff is. You create a contract with the customer that the staff can't get out of, right? Because it's stated, but regardless of whatever the employee said. So, again, I'm trying to say, how do we get out there, and what do we need to produce in order to lay this strategy out so it's not just us, right? So that we can get other people to do it, because really that's what's required.
I show up places and make people mad.
Well, I know, but I'm an executive. I build organizations. Organizations require operations. Operations require procedures and processes and goals and measurements and stuff like that. And
I'm not trying to beat anybody up.
yeah.
We're trying to coordinate a grand strategy to apply our tactics with the with the swiftness that the enemy does.
Yeah.
Right? It's a set of tactics. I just teach people reciprocity. It's like, if you spot and hear reciprocity, do something about it. If you can't tell,
That's what I want to go with you to one of these things. I want to see what you do and how it works, because of course I don't.
They trap themselves at some point into, like, either they want you to solve the problem for them, or they want a preference fulfilled, or they are evading a cost.
Yeah.
You just find out which one, and then you tell them which one they're doing. And then you can offer them any number of solutions. It's like, actually, this isn't a problem. Firstly, like, if you wanted attention, you didn't have to show up to a political meeting where serious things are happening. You could have went to a friend's house and talked nonsense.
Right. Why are you here?
If you're not an adult, leave. People should lead with that. You can't be any more hostile with them than their enemies are being, and they're thinking about compromising with them. They're not tossing you out. Everyone's worried that this stuff is hard to sell, and I try to keep people away from me. Easy to sell. I'm offering you stability and something to build upon, because the sand that they gave you, not cutting it.
This is, I'm sorry, can I emote for a second?
I thought that's all we were doing.
No. For me, emoting is a way to relieve the stress of strategizing. So a lot of people get good at getting attention. And then they incrementally develop what they get attention for. We started out with, what's the fucking science? Now, how do we get attention to it? We're social scientists. We're not populists. We're trying to empower you, not have power. I like that because it prevents what you were just talking about, what Luke was talking about, which is they want somebody else to solve the problem for them. There is
Yeah,
no.
I'm raising my own kids. I don't want to raise you.
Yeah. And that's sort of how my world works too. Is
Plus,
that
everyone knows scientists don't solve problems.
they don't. They answer questions.
I'm playing with you.
They're a dick.
Oh, engineers do.
I'm just calling them nerds. They sit down and think. Stop thinking it's so hard.
No, you're not. The problem is, I would say people will act when two things happen. They have the incentives and they know what the fuck to do. The problem is that they've now, the window is moved over the awareness. The window on somebody else will do this for me is closing. So the incentive is pretty much arisen. The problem is they don't know what to do. And the answer is, we want to do is say, we can solve this without hanging 100 million people, right? We can solve this without blood in the streets, but we are not going to solve this by letting them win. That's not a solution. That's the end of, that's another dark age. So
I mean, suicide, adaptation, or death, yeah?
right. I mean, if I was a company, so I'm just trying to take you through my mind, right? So but if I was going to, when I go to another company, what do? I listen to what they're capable of doing. I try to find out what they're good at. And I try to figure out how what the message is they need to reach the market they need. Once you say that, it's called a creative brief, and you give it to a creative guy. They find some cute way of talking about it, and they give it back to you. Then you go show them all of what you've done and the cute way of talking about it. And you figure out, okay, now who is going to try to fuck this up in your organization? Your market is going to fuck it up this way. Your advertising company, your customer service is going to fuck it up. Your sales department's going to fuck it up. Your management, your delivery. How is on this message, on this strategy? How are each of those groups going to try to fuck it up? And then you have to go down into all those groups and make sure there's how they're going to do it, which is you basically disambiguate. You figure out what their operations are and how they're going to fuck up this strategy. And so I'm just trying to figure out, how do we make all this go there, because we're sort of done, right? I mean, we're now into send it off to marketing for composition, and then now we've got to go out and sell it, and we've got to sell it and make sure that we can deliver on it. And I'm just trying to say, and then we got to be able to scale it, which means we have to proceduralize it. So I'm just trying to walk through how would I do that, because it's one thing to feel internally you understand, it's another thing to feel you can make another person understand. It's another thing to build a movement, an organization that can benefit from making people understand. And hopefully in the end, together they produce some deliverable. So I'm just walking through this, and I'm sorry if I'm being too tedious. Okay. I think if we produce concrete deliverables that will empower groups, and we produce concrete deliverables that will empower people to assist groups, we have the draw that we need. Just want to say what our plan is. Okay. I think I have enough to work with right now. Okay, did I bore all of you? I feel like I've made all of you go to sleep. Now we can talk about dick and fart jokes and hot chicks and crazy lefties and all the other shit they're more emotionally rewarding. Okay.
I don't know. Slaying our enemies is emotionally rewarding.
Yeah, I'm really up. I'm going to be all peaceful and try to be, but I'm definitely down there with Eli, and I want spears, bonfires, and skull pyramids, and I want revenge, but it doesn't. I have to be a good boy.
Part of me wants them to have to suffer their own failure.
I think public humiliation is the best torture that you can give a person who's done this. I mean, this is, let's be painfully true. Be painfully truthful. For all of history, the undesirable folk have known they're undesirable. And what happened in the 1800s is Marx created a mythology for the undesirable people to believe that they were not undesirable. And so
I mean, that was every Abrahamic ideology.
yeah, that was the next thing out of my mouth.
So that wasn't the first one.
That's right. The Abrahamic ideology is that you're not undesirable. It's a mythology by which the undesirable can believe that they are oppressed rather than undesirable. Just as it's the mother's ideology that her children are oppressed or limited rather than they're fuck ups. And she's a bad mom. It's the same behavior, whether it's motherhood, religion, or philosophy, or ideology, or pseudoscience. It's the same behavior. So, I mean, really what's happened is these undesirables feel like what's happened is the whole Abrahamic project, but specifically the Marxist project, are revolts against the Darwinian explanation. That's all it is. And so you have undesirable people not contributing and saying that they're oppressed rather than they're unfit. Now the truth of that is that's just what it is. It's just true. Now, the problem is, what do we do about it? Do we take all the unfit and, like the Spartans, even though they're the unfit babies, and throw them off the cliff? Do we imprison large numbers of the population, which is what we do in America? Do we pay them off? Do we put them in ghettos? Do we hire the Pied Piper to make them disappear into the mountain? I mean, I don't.
It's contingent on their crimes.
It's basically, it's their choice, right? But the choice isn't that the undesirable people get to rule the desirable people, because desirability is just what it means by not being, in other words, cooperation is a measure of desirability.
Well, in justifying the undesirable, we also deny them the path to build value.
Excuse me, say that again. I didn't get it.
In justifying the undesirable, right, and giving them an excuse to be undesirable.
We
We deny
remove the
them-
responsibility and
Right,
ability.
Right, we deny them the path to build into value then.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course.
We're
the
baiting them into
schools are
it's baiting into
teaching kids-
hazard. Sorry,
Right.
Martin, go ahead.
Well, the schools are teaching kids to be undesirable.
Yes.
They're
How,
by
how,
the
much, how
undesirable.
much more undesirable can you get than being a tranny?
Mhm. Oh, I mean, but if you're a tranny, you can claim special, we call it, special circumstance, special needs, special.
Right, they've made it desirable. They've made that.
No, well, I mean, have they made it
desirable.
desirable, or have they
Desirable.
said they've eliminated the pressure responsibility for all forms of conformity?
They've made it desirable in the frame of the child. They've incentivized economically.
Well, that's bio-Leninism / Abrahamism.
Right.
Same thing.
Correct.
Affirming, it's gender affirming, it's just predatory sexual grooming. It's not no distinction. You can just tell parents that too, by the way.
I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We got a lot of work to do, but
Yeah, what would you do as a parent of a child? What would you do if a stranger kidnapped your child and cut off their genitals? It's not more okay when you do it.
yeah, I really, responsibility, liability, are not as moral, but as costs are just simply facts.
Right.
Responsibility, demonstrated competency. Yeah.
It's just cutting through the justifications to expose the costs.
Okay, I got it.
The way I see things is like, you can either decide to act like decisively, teach the science of decidability, right? Or you can't. And people are making too many decisions that are on the can't side of that line. Not only, like, you can't act that way because you start a retaliatory cycle like with this place, not anything else. It's a universal law. You don't get to warp people like that and expect them to function in the future. They function poorly, which has externality. You will pay for the distortions. We can ameliorate them because we've caused them. We know where they are. We can ameliorate the harms that are already done, but we're fighting an uphill battle. Anybody who's trying to make it worse, like, those are criminals.
But you see this is that it's a minority of the people. They're just the vocal minority,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And so they use undermining. In other words, they undermining, canceling, shouting down. They use everything to suppress the demand for responsibility, accountability, and truth and reciprocity. And they do everything possible to suppress it because they don't want to pay that cost of it, and they're happy to externalize their cost of irresponsibility in others. Still, it's like that freaking troll that was arguing with me the other day, and I just had to keep at her because I was just trying to understand. But I mean, these people they're mentally ill. I mean, they're just really exceptional at projection. It's amazing. So, all right. Well, Okay, so I'm done with my deep dive on strategy. Yes, and I think I know. I learned from this what our positioning is. Got to be. I'll take a draft of it and see what you guys think. And eventually we'll get to where we're running some sort of boot camp. And that'll be a victory, I think. I don't want to do any any populist stuff. It's just too many idiots.
The unpopular people. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is the freedom to be unpopular. That's what it is. I just show up, tell people that I'm going to be the unpopular guy here, but you want to listen to what I'm going to say.
I've got a, we're having a Republican meeting, Republican or Libertarian meeting in Redmond, outside Seattle, and we got a public room at the library. And what's funny is that the left sent one of their lefties, and I just spent the time at the beginning explaining how he was a bad person, and he just left.
Mhm.
You can win when there's only so many of them, right?
Right.
They have when it's many to one, they can't. You just have to reverse the numbers.
We don't want to be the unpopular guys. We want to be the uncomfortably popular guys.
Mhm.
It says better frames.
All right. Okay, so I feel like I've made this meeting boring now.
Well, I mean, it's a business meeting.
Okay. Wait.
You're doing a good job of being uncomfortably popular.
We're the strippers in the beer. I've used that my whole career. That whole line of we're the strippers, we're the dancing girls, where's the beer, where's the shots, the cigars. Of course, it never happens. Some fucking day, I've got to arrange it so it actually happens and video it so I can tell. No, I do this all the time. See, you go back and every time I talk about strip, so I've got to do it once. I swear to God, I could have bought that goddamn strip club for 10 or 20 grand back in Kevin. If I'd only kept it in business for 6 months, I'd be talking smack about that for the rest of my life because that was so fun. That would have been so funny just to be able to tell people I ran a strip club in Kiev. Damn, it's gone now, apparently. But anyway, the problem with those strip clubs in Kiev is you have to bribe the cops for protection. And so when they get pressure, you have to bribe them more. And so the guy told me the problem is the expenses are controllable except for the bribes. And it's funny because among Russians, among Eastern guys in the post-Soviet, there is a sense that some level of corruption is necessary for the world to work properly. Whereas in our world, there's no corruption is tolerable, at least if it's visible. All right.
In our word, it's called lobbying.
Lobbying, yes, exactly.
Or governing.
Do we run a risk of being I don't want to be too American here.
What? Why not?
I'm asking.
We're not being American enough.
What's different about what we're saying? And I mean, here's, I'm just playing with this, all right? Just falsify my argument, right? This is a board of directors, right? The CEO's job is to go to the board of directors, propose ideas, and have them shot down and left as dead feathers on the ground in the bloody mess. And you walk out of the room saying, well, I guess I fucked that one up. That one didn't fly. What let's wait till tomorrow. I'll try another one. But what, so the only, let's take the most of the world versus the Western Europe, which is really what's happened is that the American institution has the geostrategic military complex has been pursuing the military strategy of the post-war period, which is to force everybody into trade, right? I mean, this is something we've already been over. And then we have the petrodollar and all this other stuff. All of this is simply for the purpose of reducing the friction of trade, so it's so beneficial to join into that network of trade that there are no plausible alternatives other than force. And because of that, the size of that franchise, force is untenable. Right? That's the basic strategy. And so it's basically a bribe to be a good person, right? To be a good world citizen.
Or an extortion.
What?
Or an extortion.
I'm not sure how it's an extortion when so far you can't fucking lose, right? If you play the game, everybody wins. I mean, there's nothing like it in history. So
clearly not now when it requires to accept all the degeneracy.
well, I'm just getting there, right? Why is it that you fucking guys always take away my goddamn punchline? You always get ahead of me. You always take my thunder. You always kill my punchline. It's like you're fucking prescient, and like I'm gonna like deprive Kurt of his joy.
I was worried you're not gonna get there.
Well, that does happen, doesn't it? Where the fuck was that?
Just making sure you're not being centrist again.
I love you. So that was the idea. Now, what happened though is that the cathedral complex got ahead of this and said it was about democracy and world love and one world government. No, it was a simple strategic court bribe, military court bribe, right? To play nice according to the rules, do your own thing, and trade, and we'll all be better off. Right? So the problem is we got the military industrial military economic industrial what or something. There's some fucking complex there. The thing that was before the cathedral, right? The military industrial complex, the Western aristocratic tradition, right? We're trying to create this whole fucking British Empire of trade, right? American Empire of trade. So then we get the cathedral jumps in and they spin it into this sort of secular humanist bullshit. And then the woke gets involved and they take it to limits. Now, what is the world really objecting to? Are they objecting to all this order and peace and economic prosperity? Or are they objecting to the fact that they're claiming our order gives license to the cathedral and to woke? They're saying that. So what happened is we put out a very empirical result. It turned into philosophy, which was the secular humanist bullshit, and then it turned into an ideology, which is this woke. But the problem is the strategy is fantastic. Our tolerance is the problem. Because the rest of the world agrees with us that this is bad. They don't want this to happen. You see these interviews around the world like, well, America's more fucked up than we are. They're just wealthy. Well, I mean, yeah, I get it, right? We are more fucked up than you are. We're just wealthy. The difference is the underlying infrastructure differs from the cultural bullshit that the cathedrals put together. So where was I going with that? I was going with the fact that we don't communicate that as that the West consists of this basic empirical foundation that's correct and beneficial to everyone, but that that this tolerance is a problem, and what our humanists call democracy is actually just this excessive tolerance of evasion of responsibility, right? I mean, that's it. So how do we make that? How do we disambiguate those two things? In other words, you said identify an enemy, right?
Right.
We have a solution. We have an enemy, but we have a problem, which is the difference between the Western group strategy, which is this commercial military one, and the courtly truth and reciprocity, whatever, and this woke shit that's been pulled up top of it by the credentialists in the left. How do we pull those two apart so that we are talking about, so we go to the world and say, yeah, you're absolutely right, these people are shit. The problem is help us throw them out, right? Help us crush the woke so that we can keep the global order. I don't know. So, is there a way to do that?
I don't know. I think some of it starts earlier than that, because in some ways we exceeded our trading partners' ability to be responsible, and so they rejected responsibility when we did that.
I think that's
We've been
probably true.
subsidizing that gap.
I think that's probably true. Can you clarify that?
So, like I said, we've kind of coerced the world into trade.
Yes.
To avoid to minimize violence and sustain cooperation. At some point, that becomes an illusion if we're exceeding our trading partners' ability to reciprocate, and so we're subsidizing their inability. But there's a continuous demand for them to accept the responsibility of that trade, of that ability to trade, and they're rejecting even that level of responsibility. And so that just opens up all the vulnerabilities that all the other rejections of responsibility then manifest in. We didn't impose limits when our trading partners could no longer reciprocate the responsibility of trade.
Okay, so can you give me some case? Because I'm having a problem. Because what I found is that there are, I had this problem with an African guy yesterday, which is fairly interesting. Right? He's an African immigrant to Canada. Seemed like a smart guy, and I'm just playing with him a little bit, trying to get his frame. And he keeps going through all this oppression narrative, and I'm like, dude, I mean, Africa was started from a disadvantageous position. You have a demographic problem. You have an infrastructure problem. You have but you're just behind. 100 years, you're gonna be fine.
Right, but they're using 8-year-olds to mine the materials we're building our batteries out of. That's not reciprocal exchange with a trading partner.
I agree with that. I'm not okay. So let's answer. I'm trying to separate two questions.
Right.
Are they capable of it, or are we doing it? Are we not handling it correctly? In other words,
what I'm saying is often we are exceeding our trading partners' ability to be capable of it.
well, they're capable of it because they're mining it with 8-year-olds. What we're doing is we're externalizing a cost onto them we shouldn't.
Right.
Right. So
if they were
that's what I mean by
party,
capability.
right. Well, if they were a responsible party, they would say no to that exchange.
Oh, okay. So we're arguing over the meaning of capable.
Those kids might be actually worse off if they don't get to mine.
Well, they would, but that doesn't mean it isn't possible to create a superior condition than the one there. In other words, it is possible because it's just not that expensive.
We could choose to apply our moral standards.
Well,
we could choose to apply our moral standards.
exactly.
Trade.
Right. It's different when you tell a Chinese kid, a woman, that she can move to this city and live with 5 other girls in a condo and get paid and send money back to her mom. It may seem like it's not though. When you tell an 8-year-old kid into a mine, that's not okay. Now, if the choice is between sending that 8-year-old kid in the mine so that he's not hungry, and not sending that 8-year-old kid in the mine so he's hungry, that's still a worse choice. The thing is, we don't need the cost of our materials that are brought out of that mine to be so cheap that it requires an 8-year-old kid to do it, right? There's no way, there's no reason for that. In other words,
subsidizing that irresponsibility.
You're subsidizing your responsibility. It doesn't mean that they have to have first world standard of living.
No.
It does mean that if there's kids there and there's adults who can do the work and adults can get paid enough to care for children, that's what we should be doing.
We can't offer them that or pay for it for them. Like they got to build it themselves. We're
Well,
watching
well, no,
people
no, no, no.
trade people.
So we can, because we've done it before. We require a certain operational standard. And I don't want to get off on the Germans again, but what the fuck did they do? I brought up the Germans and Luke dropped his fucking camera. Did it again. What are you doing, Luke?
Oh, the stand just broke.
You're a well-compensated professional. You can afford a stand.
Honestly, those other countries need protectionism to develop.
Yes.
Correct. So that's part of the deal. We can be demanding, right?
They require forbearance, but we have to steward self-determination or we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
All right. I mean, it's just, so I don't know. I mean, this is the problem with price. The lowest price isn't the lowest cost.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're not doing full accounting on price. Right?
Correct.
So, but that's what I was getting at, though, when I said that the failure point was earlier than the introduction of woke and things like that. They can't match the requirement of responsibility at the level of trade.
Okay, so this goes back to Kant. I thought you meant like they were physically, emotionally, culturally, and intellectually incapable. I don't see that's the case, because the whole world is proving the opposite. What you mean is that on their own, without our help, they can't.
Right.
They can't do it, right?
That's right. And when we demand it of them, they can't say yes, okay.
Right.
And our approach to trade originally was a demand of them to match that level of responsibility, and they demonstrated they can't do it on their
Well, I
own.
mean, how easy would it be to say, okay, well, you're out of the world economic system we've done it already. If you pay for people, you buy goods that are extracted by this means, and if you find a condition where you want to, we need to finance producing a condition where those people can do so ethically and morally. Not like modern middle class standards, but at least something that's not harmful.
Right. Protections and limits on trade.
Right. So Martin, you're supposed to call in. Kurt, you're awfully centrist here. You're being awfully centrist. You're not gonna. All right.
Well, I could say that wokeness, when you're calling that the enemy, is far too small category. The problem started much earlier, and wokeness is just one of the symptoms.
Right. So we could also say that it's our fault that we didn't respond to the suppression of. I mean, we tried to respond to Marxism, right? We tried to respond to all these factors, and we failed to respond. So the question I asked was, why did we fail? My answer was Christianity. I don't know if that's true, but it's the only source I can find. Because you didn't find the aristocracy in Europe doing it. You only found this coming from the Christian faith, whether it have been the church or the Protestant utopianism that came from the Protestant Revolution. But if you look at least my Puritan ancestors, they were pretty fucking racist, culturist, everythingist. I mean, they were anti-Catholic. So I don't know. I mean, I have when we say what's the problem, we can go back to, well, women are born that way. People institutionalized the women's method of undermining, and this is the most recent one. But in the past, we controlled women. We controlled people who got involved in religion. We controlled the underclass. We limited the damage that they could do. So why did we let the woke thing get there? Why did we let communism happen? I mean, people go back and they make fun of McCarthy, but it was right. He was right. I mean, look at what Hollywood has done.
Well, that's enemy's control over the media.
Right, but why do they,
How did they get control of the media?
they get control of the media because we let them.
Right. It doesn't start there.
It starts with the combination of their behavior and our permissiveness. So what's the disconnect between what we are permissive about and their behavior? And the answer is we simply haven't outlawed their antisocial behavior the way we did in the past. I don't think it's called adulting, right? I mean, the underclass didn't have the power to be unadult in the past, and now they have economic and political power, and so do women, and they're not acting like adults. Are we surprised that the people who have traditionally not been adults are not acting like adults? Okay, fine. So who's the fault? The children or the adults? Well, it's the adults. Brandon, who's to blame? The dog or the trainer? The owner, right? It's the owner. The dog's just a fucking dog.
Very much most of the time.
Yeah, pretty much. So why did we let it go on? Why did we let it happen? Why are we still letting it happen? Do we not? Do
I
we?
think that we were letting it go on as just a debt accumulation, and we were foregoing a cost.
Yeah, but it's one thing to know something is to say some effect is bad. It's another to know what causes bad. And
I
so
think that there were always malincentives within the system. Everybody could be bought off.
I think faulty perception causes bad because it tells you can acquire things you can't.
Yep.
So we talk about informing people's perception, like what we're affording you. You don't need a framework. You need to be able to handle the variables that present themselves in the present, always. And the test is reciprocity in the present, like any interaction with anyone you've got. And you don't need to carry all the context from the past because it's a cognitive burden. No one makes their case from first principles. They're not grounded in reality. They're grounded in some narrative or something.
Right.
Is a thing. Their feet aren't even on the ground.
You're asking too much. So let me go back to my original question. Okay, so my original frame for asking this series of questions is, okay, so this is, I view this as a global problem and America as ground zero. All right, that's just how I view it. So I don't see so the woke problem is at least a Western European problem. Certainly everything Hungary does and Poland do. I'm like, yeah, well, that's
because it's our women.
Because it's our women.
Feminism manifests as like worship the vagina in India.
They're still not going too far. They are being subverted, just not that fast.
Yes. So the problem is, how do we disambiguate what the West brings to the world that's beneficial because we don't say it. We don't have the thing behind the wall on the president saying, this is what we've been doing. This is what the British did before. This is what the Northern Germans did before that. This is what the Italians did before that. This is what the Romans did before that, and the Greeks did before that. And we don't have this thing on the wall that says we're just trying to build a world where people don't fight because it's too prosperous to not fight and just trade. And so we don't. So that's what we're trying to do. Now, and so why don't we don't have that? So the problem is what they hear is American culture. They don't hear American strategy. And so when they look at America, they look at all the dysfunctional stuff, which is rampant because it's woke, it's irresponsibility, it's infantile.
Because it's Civil Rights Act. Everything follows from that.
And how does the Civil Rights Act get implemented?
Yes.
If everything follows from it.
Yeah. Well, we know what happened. So it was and so I mean, it's like, so my problem is, how do we, if we're going to talk about this problem, we have to disambiguate the strategy that we're employing as Westerners from the woke that we're not preventing as Westerners.
By prosecuting them as
Right. No, but I mean, how do we make that? In other words, how do we enfranchise? I mean, because if you tell the average Middle Eastern guy who's educated, I mean, he's not a fundamentalist, right? I mean, because I know we have a lot of followers of them, right? They're not really ex-Muslims. They're just Turks and Iranians and Egyptians and whatever, and their world is, I'm not dismissing you guys, I love you, right? They're just not fundamentalists anymore, and they're like, this woke shit's fucking horrible. That's the problem here, is this woke shit, right? So the same thing is with Russians. I mean, we don't have any dispute with the Russians except over this real woke shit. Right? Everything else we get, it's just a matter of security and trade. So how do we disambiguate the two? So I mean, because that's what makes it different between an American problem and a world problem. Does that make sense or no? I'm failing.
I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think the problem goes back further than that. So I don't know.
The problem does go back farther than that. What I'm saying is, if we're going to go to market, we're going to have this strategy. We're going to apply these tactics. We're going to bring out this message and this stuff. What's our positioning so that we are preserving this model of cooperation, world cooperation, and we're actually only attacking this woke thing, which is woke, PC, Abrahamism, feminism, all this other crap.
Right.
I'm just trying to disambiguate that, and I feel like I'm not doing a very good job right now.
No, I think you're doing an adequate job. How do we demonstrate that we can do the trade without woke growing in the space?
A lot. I mean, it's really, and we tell the world that's what we're going to do. I actually think the way to do it is help us get rid of this problem for the world.
In September 2019, Trump said that the federal government will not do any business with any company that does critical race theory. Right. They put the squash on that right away, but that's the answer. It's like, how about repatriate every global company that went woke? You fell prey to it. You don't get to stand steward over your assets because you're unfit to do so. And like now they're the military's assets as a commons.
You have to bring an example because I can't figure out what to do.
Oh, any of Amazon, Bank of America, pick them. They all Black Lives Matter hashtags everywhere. That's
but what do you mean? What do you mean repatriate?
I mean, take their strategic infrastructure in a combinatoric fashion and serve the people the way those companies are supposed to serve them as a national company.
No, I see. Okay.
Well, many of those companies are doing it because of what government expects of them, the
I think it's
ESG
really,
score.
you make a list of crimes that are woke, that are sedition,
Give people the choice to
and
stop.
just let people take individuals to court until it goes away. I mean, that's the easiest way, because that empowers every man a sheriff, right? And it says, okay, well, if you press that woke stuff, that's sedition against. It's not only against the culture; it's against the rule of law itself. It's against truth itself. It's against man and nature. If you want to, it's against God. I don't know. I'm not kind of in that shit, but okay. So, I mean, my view is the bottom up way is just use the court system to enable people, empower individuals, because at that point you can't. There's no sneaking around. The minute you're in some HR department trying to play this woke stuff. The other thing is, of course, you reverse all this involuntary association, and you restore involuntary disassociation. And then what will happen, of course, is that people will behave instantaneously, because that's what's allowing it, is that we need the ability to ostracize people for nonconformity to high trust norms. Period. We have to have the ability to do it. And if we can't ostracize them socially, we can't ostracize them economically, we can't punish them politically by the law, then we won't be able to restore high trust norms, and we'll continue to have the undermine. So I just think so I see it as a legislative problem, but because the court creates a market for the suppression of individual behaviors. I like the idea of taking companies, and my example is any company whose staff is more than X% foreign will be exported to whatever foreign country that it is. What'll happen, of course, they'll have to take their staff with them, and that'll change. And of course, what'll happen is that they'll have to decide. The management will have to decide whether they want to be an American company or not. But you're not going to have the benefits of the American people and government without having an American population. And because in order to have American population, the only way to do it is to have American ethics. American ethics are British ethics, and British ethics are Germanic ethics, and Germanic ethics are European ethics, and European ethics are truth before face, duty before self, etc. Reciprocity and display, sovereignty and reciprocity and display word and deed. So again, I ran up dry on, I ran 2 courses here. I was trying to say, how do we separate the strategy from the problem from the strategy? In other words, they call it a Western problem. It's not. It's a Jewish feminist problem, right? It's not a Western male problem. It's a Jewish feminist problem. Why is that, right? Well, that's because where it came from. So we agree with the world that this needs to stop. We need you to help us stop it. On the other hand, if you don't help us stop it, you throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is our underlying. In other words, how do you globalize this issue? I'm coming up dry here. I'm just failing. This is one of those things where, I'm just not hitting the right notes. If the comedian telling the joke and it's not landing, the musician playing the song.
I understand the question. I just don't know.
Right. I guess, let's say I'm one of America's enemies, right? And America comes to me and goes, hey, let's trade instead of fight. And then I'm going, okay, we're going to trade. And then you say, and then I'll let you in. So you're telling me as your enemy that all I got to do is agree to trade with you and you're going to let me in? But then you turn around and say, we want you to do the same thing. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to let my enemies in.
Yeah, but what do you mean let you in?
Well, I mean, how did we get to the point where any of our enemies were in our in groups?
Oh, you,
because we started trading with them.
wait a minute, I'm still not there. Hold on. So China's an enemy. We trade with China a lot, right?
And they're buying property here all the time. We let them in.
Oh, okay. Well, okay,
Our form of trade lets our enemies in.
okay, that you're,
If I was an enemy, I would say no to that. I would say, no, thanks. I'm good. I don't want to trade that way.
well, I mean, that's different from, that's not trade, right? I mean,
That's what our form of trade has done.
well, I mean, that's a different,
No, we've been doing that forever, though. We brought back bankers into our communities from
yeah, I agree.
outside of our communities. We've been
Yes.
selling our communities
Right,
on behalf of profit and trade.
but that's again
That's how
internal.
we started trade.
That's an internal question. What I'm talking about is international trade. We can trade internationally. It doesn't make any fucking difference. It's when we're not trading, in other words, when we're incorporating, that's a problem. I don't want them among us either. I just don't. I mean,
The point I'm getting at is we're trying to solve for female defection when we haven't solved for male defection. Because that's male defection, is selling out your community for profit.
okay, I agree with that.
And we started there first, long before females started defecting.
Okay, so that's a good take. So you're saying trade must never, no trade must ever reach the point of defection,
Right. Our middle class shouldn't be subsidizing the rest of the world's trade.
right?
Because sure, it's profitable, but it's not being profitable
Well,
for the people paying for it.
the truth is, it was okay for them to subsidize the world trade through the sense of producing a market for world trade, right? That was fine.
That's an
What
investment.
happened, right? But we weren't. What we did is we allowed labor arbitrage, right? The minute we allowed labor arbitrage, then you're getting into what is now which is now a defection versus a trade.
Right.
Right. Okay. I just had to catch up there. All right. All right. So I can't come anywhere globalizing the issue, and that's where I'm stuck.
Right.
Okay. I'm done. That's my big stuff for
So
the day.
it's a local, I mean, it's a proximal issue. It's an issue of polities. They need the law so that they can create their own value hierarchy and trade reciprocally with those who they can trade with and not with those they can't. It's the only thing we should export, not our people, nothing. Just you can
I
have.
agree. I
You
mean,
can have
but this
rules.
is just, see, in my world, this is just fellow accounting.
Right.
There's something
Yeah.
called, there's either reciprocal trade or free trade. Free trade is a dirty word, right? Free trade means that people can engage in labor arbitrage. People, right? But reciprocal trade means they can't, because you're fully accounting for transfer of demonstrated interest, internal, external, other transactions.
Yep.
So labor arbitrage is whatever. Now, if you could say two things. Now, if you say our people can't produce fabric competitively on the world stage, is that labor arbitrage? In other words,
Trading for fabric.
right, for example, there's a big difference between I'm doing this because weaving fabric is one of the best studied. It's very interesting how looms that started out in England, right, got brought to America and then to China and then Singapore, and they've moved around the world, and now those same looms are sitting in Africa somewhere, right? I mean, so it just the reason is weaving is a marginally unproductive, it's only marginally productive. It's just a little bit. So you have to have really cheap labor in order to make it work. Well, we think of that as maybe bad, except that we've actually given everybody a step on the ladder by having them be able to move weaving, right? Now, if you're England and you're losing weaving, it's not the same as shutting down your plant and weaving over here. It's the same of we can't weave competitively. Right, that's a different issue. We need to reallocate those people to something else. Then there's the problem of stuff that requires knowledge, like scientific research. That has to stay at home no matter what, because the value of the cloth and the value of the knowledge in the heads of the people who are conducting research are two kinds of goods. And they have
You're also giving that knowledge to your enemies.
Correct. You're giving knowledge to your enemies. There's a difference between giving a depreciated asset to someone else who can use it because it's no longer producing returns, and giving knowledge to your enemies who can use it to produce competitive advantage. Right? I mean, that's the basic thing. So the problem that Luke is bringing up, which I always say, you either have a rule of law or you don't. And you have rule of law by reciprocity or you don't. And your reciprocity is either fully accounted or it isn't. If you conduct a measure by income statement, you get away with a lot of shit. But if you do conduct a measurement by balance sheet, you don't. Full accounting requires a balance sheet. We don't do economics as a balance sheet. We do it as an income statement, thereby allowing externalization of the loss of capital, right? In other words, the invisibility of it. What we're saying is full accounting requires the economy to be treated as a balance sheet with the full accounting of all changes in all capital, right? And so if you offshore capital to somebody else, right, you've actually caused harm against the people. Now, you may have found a profitable way to do that, but that profit came at the expense of others internally. Now, there's a difference between seizing an opportunity and imposing an internal cost. So, for example, when people come together in proximity, they decrease opportunity and transaction costs. That's why things go up with density, right? I mean, everything goes up with density. And what happens with density is opportunity cost goes down and responsibility goes down with it. That's why you have city people. When you distribute things, responsibility goes up and opportunity cost goes up. That's why you have non-city people. And that's why we think differently about the world, because we carry different amounts of responsibility. And that's because there's no other alternative, right? It's called time and space. So when you bring people in together, that's great. Now, all of a sudden you said, okay, when we bring people together, we've reduced the cost of opportunities. We're seizing an opportunity we created by our proximity. Now you go and you say, I'm going to seize this opportunity by depriving other people of the opportunity for profit by going to an external group and using labor arbitrage. Now, what I've done is I've taken for other people and I've privatized that gain. Was that followable by
Yes,
people?
absolutely.
Right. So that's not a fully accounted gain. It may make you happy. It may reduce a price. And if we reduce one price, I think that's fine. I mean, especially a price on something that doesn't matter, like loincloths. Come on, did I get a smile out of that? I didn't get anything. I threw that, never mind. So like cotton, right? It doesn't matter, right? I mean, but if you do it on something like, what are those things? The inhaler, the things we did with the air oxygen pumps we used during COVID. What are they called? Respirators. If you do it on respirators, you do it on strategic medicines, you do it on rare earth metals, you do it on, I mean, those are loss of capital external to the product. Anyway, Martin has to go. So my point with Luke is, yeah, you're right, but I go back to, well, I mean, it's either rule of law of reciprocity, it's either rule of law of reciprocity with full accounting. But if it's not one of those things, then the market's fucking open. right? I hate the word free trade for this reason. No, I want fully accounted reciprocal trade.
Free from what?
Yeah, free from what? Free to get away with shit is what it means.
Free from full accounting.
Yep.
Whenever that word is used, it just means free from full accounting. Free
what it
speech
means.
is free from full accounting. Free trade is free from full accounting.
Free will.
It's an avoidance of responsibility.
All right, guys, it's lunchtime. Martin's got to go. I got a lot out of this, believe it or not. I hope we
Yeah, we
didn't.
jumped around a bit, but it was a good one.
Sorry, what?
We jumped around a bit, but it was a good one.
I actually tried to. I had a whole thing planned out. I followed the whole circuit, but boy, it went all over the fucking place. Anyway, love you guys. Let me know if
Have a
there's
good
anything
day.
else I need to do. Bye-bye.
Right.